Hey, what's up, Instagram? It's Greg here at Fisherman's Headquarters. Just wanted to log on and say hello, check some things out, see how everybody's doing. Wanted to share a little bit about some updates here at Fisherman's Headquarters. A couple things going on. So hopefully everybody's safe. Hopefully everybody's holding it down at home. Hopefully some people are getting out and fishing and enjoying some time. Today was a fun one for me. I got an invite from Max, co-worker at the shop. Went out fishing early this morning and we got on some fish. We had a couple hours of good fun fishing. Also heard some other reports coming in from the local area here in LBI. Some more small striped bass. The local resident fish are roaming around. It's been a month now. Pretty good fishing. Smaller fish still. Hopefully we'll start seeing some bigger fish and some fish off the surf. Very, very few anglers fishing the surf with the limited access that there is. Can say I did get 2 reports. One was a total skunking. One was a skate on salted clam. So that's all I can report off the Long Beach Island surf as far as that goes. I can share that the tog fishing's been pretty good. The tog season in the spring is short, so it's something that you kind of got to get on if you want to get on it. Get it while the getting's good. Season's going to be closing down here at the end of April. Shop ambassador Swag's been getting out as much as possible. He's doing good. He's been sharing some love and sharing some fillets, doing a little barter system, which is cool. I appreciate that. So shout out to Swag. Jared Grady, another local angler, friend of the shop, good dude, sent us a photo. Actually just threw it up a couple minutes ago as a featured post for the day. He had a pair of nice tog. He reported that it was a slow fishing day, but it picked up after the slow morning. And they had a couple good hours of fishing the local wrecks off of Long Beach Island. He was out with a couple friends, got out, fishing before the blow. Other than that, as far as the fishing front goes here on Long Beach Island, some stuff that I can share is the drum fishing is progressing along. There's been some drum here the last, week or so. Last couple of days, some anglers have been getting out with the surf kind of being churned up, some wind. The bay fishing is kind of where all that's taking place. As far as some other things, I wanted to touch base. We are shipping some bait. So if you're not close to a bait and tackle shop, or if your local shop is closed, we can get some stuff to you, whether it's tackle or bait. That's what we do here at Fisherman's Headquarters. We sell bait and we sell tackle. Since 1962, that's our thing. So if you need some, reach out to us. We can help. So that being said, we did ship some worms a couple days ago, recently, to Rob T, and he just reached out to us just short moments ago, and shared a photo. We just threw it up in the story a little bit ago of a nice chubby striper that he caught on the Delaware River. So he is from Pennsylvania. He needed some bloodworms. We packed them up, shipped him a few dozen, and I was happy to hear that he caught some fish. So thank you so much for the business, and thank you for sharing that photo with us. And thank you for the most recent order. We'll get those bloodworms shipped out to you right away, and you'll have some freshies. So that being said, there's a little bit of this COVID-19 thing that's like slowly taking over the entire world, or maybe quickly taking over the entire world. But it really hits home when the beaches are closed, when the businesses are closed, when all the friends and family are out of work, and I'm sure everybody's experienced it, so it's nothing new here, and I shouldn't really ramble about it too much because it's kind of old news. So the one thing that really hit me by surprise today, maybe it wasn't breaking news today, but I found out about it today, was ICAST 2020 is canceled. And that Florida show that really I live for every year, I look forward to so much all year long, was super bummed out to hear that the Florida show is canceled. There's talk that there might be a virtual show, or maybe they're trying to put something together. That's cool and all, but having the entire sport fishing community, recreational, freshwater, saltwater, you got the California guys, everybody come off the West Coast, the Southeast, the Gulf Coast, the guys from freshwater all across the country, and Northeast, kind of everybody under one roof, all the major brands, is really a special time to get out and see the industry. To get out and see new products, get out and see old friends, make new friends, check out best-selling products that maybe some other shops are selling that you might not be, or the other way around. Maybe you could share some love, at least I like to, and let manufacturers, let other vendors, let other shops know kind of what's working for us and what's not, and trying to, got that give and take to learn to see what's going on. So if you guys are normally stoked on hearing about the new stuff that goes down at ICAST, or hearing about, the news from the industry, what goes on there, it's not a public show. It's a more of a, insider trade show. Definitely super big, letdown. It takes the wind out of the sails for me, at least this summer. Just one more thing that I was looking forward to that's chopped out. So I guess, on behalf of the ASA who runs the ICAST show, I give you guys props for canceling. I think it was the right thing to do with the uncertainty here. But for sure, definitely bummed out. So if you guys are looking for some new product releases, maybe it's still going to happen through some virtual show and whatnot. But yeah, major bummer. So I may make this short. I may ramble on all night. Depends on if you guys have questions. Let us know. Shoot it in here. So Chef BRD says, what was the date for the show? So that was July. It's always right after 4th of July. It's normally like the kind of 6th, 10th in that region to like the 12th, 15th, 18th, somewhere in there. So it's like before the teens normally of July, but after 4th of July. So super bummed out on that. It's every once in a blue moon in Las Vegas, but every year it's normally in Florida. It's a great time, basically all a sport fishing show under one roof, the whole industry there. So if you guys have questions, reach out, send them in. I'll love to answer them, try to interact a little bit here. If you guys got, some information that you want to kind of push my way, or some questions, products, whatever. Bear IF says, are they hitting stripers on the surf on the island yet? And that would be a no, at least as far as I know. They're not hitting them. I did report, you'll see on Fishing LBI, the fishing report blog that I do, that we run at the shop. Chris Messino, who's a local angler, did catch a striper off the surf, reported that. I think there's a photo, either we posted as a feature post or in a story, but it's definitely on our Fishing LBI blog if you want to check that out. That was the only report that I have gotten firsthand. So maybe there's other stripers around off the surf, but if you want to target stripers, I wouldn't say it's the best time to put in a lot of effort. I encourage effort. Guys, I want to put a little bit of time in and see what you can, what your luck has for you. But it's still not warmed up yet. It's still like in that high 40 range, 48, 49. It kind of hit 50, I think, a couple days ago, and then it cooled back off. We had that good south blow, did a little upwelling. Speaking of upwelling, that's a topic we could possibly talk about. But maybe I'll leave that for another Instagram live post. It's something, that phenomenon that happens in the summertime here in Long Beach Island that people kind of flip their heads on and don't understand. They can't fathom how the water can go from 70 degrees to 60 degrees in almost a day, sometimes hours. And then a prolonged southerly wind event can even bring it much, much colder. So maybe I'll touch base on that on another date. Unless people want to message in and say, hey, let's talk about upwelling, we can do that. It's just really not that common this time of year in the spring. It's more of a summertime phenomenon. So maybe I'll save that for like later spring or summer. We'll touch base on that. I wanted to kind of touch base on some rod talk about fishing rods. It's a very common thing that customers bring up when they're shopping in the store. We also get a lot of messages from customers looking for rods, and naturally online, it's kind of hard to buy a rod without feeling it. So one of the things, if I want to jump into this now, I might as well. One of the things that I'm kind of disappointed in the fishing industry as a whole, and mostly manufacturers for a long, long time, is their lack of a standard within the rating systems in the rod manufacturing world. So, yes, there's lengths and there's ounce weight ratings, but there's these powers and actions that are very, very somewhat ambiguous. I guess that's the easiest way to say it. There's no standard between manufacturer and manufacturer. So you pick up, a rod that you may own from a top manufacturer, say a popular one, say manufacturer A, and it's a 7-foot medium heavy, say fast action. And you compare that to the same exact ratings on a different manufacturer. So let's say manufacturer B. And then you buy that rod thinking, hey, I want to get this rod. It should be similar to this one. And you get it and it's totally different. And you basically pound your head on the wall and say, what gives? It's the same rating, same length, same weight. What's the deal? And it really goes back to the rating flaw in the industry, that there's no standard. So if anyone is out there, they say Sean from Lamiglass, maybe Jason from St. Croix, or any of the other rod companies out there, and somebody sees this post or somebody knows them, wants to share, I would love to have you guys interact a little bit with some consumers, or maybe jump on this live video sometime and talk about how you guys rate your rods and why your standard, or the way you rate them, your personal kind of process is there, how that works, and how your theory goes into it all at the factory, and kind of what you guys might have for an idea maybe for the future of how the industry could take on a standard where there's not such a large difference in brand A, brand B, brand C in those ratings. So if you guys are listening, awesome. I love to talk about it. But one of the things I wanted to touch base on with reference to rods is the terminology of high sticking. So maybe some of you guys know what a high stick is. Maybe some of you don't. Maybe you've heard something referred to as a high stick. So in the springtime, we get bluefish around, and a common thing we see at the shop is busted rods. And I'll have to first and foremost preface this with the comment, fishing rods just don't break. All right. Customers come in all the time and say, hey man, this rod just broke. Yeah, I guess they break. Absolutely. But they don't just, magically snap in half. They are, most of the time, I'm going to say in the high 90 percentile, in my opinion, broken by abuse or misuse. Now, that terminology, misuse, can sometimes get under the skin of an angler or a customer when you say, hey man, this rod was abused and misused, and that's why it broke. And sometimes it turns into a little bit of an argument, which is rightfully so. A customer spends good money on a quality rod. They use it a couple times. Maybe they use it for a couple seasons. Maybe it's a couple years. And then they have a breakage and it was quote unquote defective. So I can understand the defective argument when you're talking about a brand new rod. You just got the rod, you fished it first couple times, or maybe you got it for a present, birthday or Christmas or holiday, whatever it may be, and you've had the rod a little bit, and maybe you didn't fish it right away. Maybe you got it in the off season and you had the rod for 3 months and you didn't fish in that 3-month period of time, and then all of a sudden, then you go fishing and it's the first couple times using it, it breaks, and you bring it back to a shop, or you go to the manufacturer and say, hey, this happened and it's outside of the 30-day period, or it's maybe it's within the 1 year. And it's those scenarios that are kind of tough. But I want to first and foremost say that rods don't just break. There are some defective rods. I get that. I'm not trying to say that every rod is manufactured perfectly. But most are. I have broken a few rods, and I'll have to say that the rods I've broken were due to abuse. Most of the time, a rod that is broken is high sticked. I believe a rod can be abused, scratched up, beat up really, really bad, and still perform and still have a lot of strength. Yes, nicks, scratches, things like that can lead to failure over time, or create a weak spot that eventually will break in a new event takes place. But the one thing I want to talk about is high sticking. So what is high sticking? The easiest thing to explain is it's when the rod is in the high vertical position. Simple as that. But why does it happen, and why do good rods break and why do cheap rods break in a high stick position, and why do some rods, like take for example an ugly stick, not snap when they're high sticked? And I can easily answer that and say they have a glass tip that's very wonky and sloppy. So most anglers don't want that. They want a powerful, crisp action. How much power is up for debate. That's where the personal preference comes in. That is where the application-specific rods come in. If you're fishing lures in a certain range, you want that rod to be in that certain weight range for casting performance purposes. With that said, if you are fishing a lighter rod and catching smaller fish, you're doing what the rod's meant to do. Cool. If you go over that weight range, let's say it's a rod that's rated up to 1 ounce, or it's a 3/4 ounce rod, and you're fishing a 1.5 ounce or 2 ounce or 3 ounce lure, and aggressively casting, you're somewhat misusing that rod. You're outside of the casting range, of the weight range, and you're potentially at risk to break the rod. That would be more of an overload failure, not a high stick. So let me jump back to the high stick and say a rod, or all rods, have a taper. The taper is basically the action. It's how the butt transitions in diameter how the blank transitions in diameter from the butt to the tip. So the bottom to the top. A rod action really determines how good or how poor it is for certain applications. So you have some slow tapers and you'll have some fast tapers, and there's different reasons for each of them. There's not a perfect rod for all fishing. It's really application specific. So when you talk about rods, you talk about some slower action, like here in New Jersey, bunker spoon fishing is very popular. And you want a slower action, a softer action, a rod that's going to pulsate and kind of give you that rhythm or motion to the rod, but also that rod translates it to the spoon and helps that spoon swim better in the water as it's being trolled. Some softer action rods are also used for jigging purposes. A softer rod, most of the time when you're jigging, it's easier to load, and it's that load and release with a speed style jigging or even a yo-yo style jig sometimes, where that action will help an angler. It's a little easier on their say the long-term jigging ability, the ability to stand at the rail for say 15, 20 minutes actively jigging, a half hour, 40 minutes, or an hour or two, or all day. Sometimes that action of that rod can add or can subtract from how many hours you can physically do it. So slower actions, to recap, a lot of times bunker spoon trolling rods would be a slower action, softer action, and also some jigging rods. That being said, most of the time casting lures and also jigging more like a bucktail jig or finesse jigging, I should say, a faster action rod is a little bit better for those applications. It responds quicker. When you load and cast a rod, it's the recovery that gives you the power of the cast. Also when you're jigging, that quick recovery or that quick action, sometimes called fast action or extra fast, or sometimes medium fast, which is more slow, is what's going to give you that movement when you lift the rod or twitch the rod and lift it, that gives you the movement of the line and the movement of the lure. Sometimes you do this like a snap jigging technique. You do not want to be fishing a slow action rod for snap jigging. So going into actions and rods a little bit, the fast action rods are going to bend more at the tip, and a slower action rod is going to bend more throughout the rod blank. Sometimes a rod that bends throughout is sometimes referred to as parabolic. That's somewhat of a terminology that you may hear kind of pushed around a little bit, to bend kind of throughout in a curved fashion. Where those fast action rods, like I mentioned, that bend just in the tip, look more like a hockey stick kind of bend, where it's up in that top quarter of a rod, and then you start getting to those blends between extra fast and moderate or moderate fast, where you start seeing those bends in the quarter to 1/3 in that proportion of the rod blank. So the reason why I mention this is how that rod bends is also very, very important with how it distributes the load when you're hooked up and fighting a fish. So let's dive into this a little bit deeper and say, if you're hooked up with a glass rod, an e-glass rod, most of the time you'll see some e-glass trolling rods for tuna, shark, what have you. There's other e-glass rods out there too. But you'll see that they, depending on the action, they bend up in the tip, but then they distribute that load throughout the midsection of the rod where it's much, much more powerful. Shorter rods get a lot more, anglers get more leverage on the fish. Longer rods, the fish gets more leverage on you, the angler. However, longer rods will give you a quicker tip speed from the back part of the cast to the forward part of the cast, or if it's just a wrist, a snap. More tip speed because of the length gives you more casting ability or distance. You can kind of get into this a little bit and compare and contrast different materials. Like I mentioned, e-glass. You start getting different grades of carbons, pre-peg carbons, and different moduluses of those, which is different grades of carbons. So before I get too off topic with that, to go back to the high sticking technique or terminology of how to break a rod, those faster action rods are much more in the tip, like I mentioned. Those rods, when you lift them and you have a fish on them somewhat close to you, they bring that energy that should be in the butt section and midsection of the rod up to the tip section, which is very weak. So basically, if you want to prevent snapping a rod, there's a very, very easy way to look at this. With a high stick, if you're familiar with an acute or obtuse angle, an obtuse angle is greater than 90 degrees, and an acute angle is less. You can double check that, but I'm pretty sure I'm accurate with that. So when you have the line coming off the tip of your rod at 90 degrees or less, this is the rod, this is the line. When it's less, it brings the rod's ability to distribute the energy or load across the entire blank. It brings it all up to the tip. So as this angle lessens, the load, which is in this hand, rather than being distributed across the entire rod, it brings it up to the midsection, up to the tip, up to the tip, up to the tip, and into this small, small part that's normally the smallest, thinnest diameter portion of the rod. Snap-a-doodle dandy. What just happened? You high stick the rod. So how can you fish and land a fish maybe solo or on a rock or alongside of a boat or on the beach or a jetty without high sticking? And it's really, really easy to come up with that conclusion. And you need to keep that line at an obtuse angle, more than 90 degrees from that tip. So how do you do that? You bring your tip down. Rather than having the butt, say, at your hip or on your leg or wherever it may be down there, depending on what's going on. Maybe it's on a fighting belt if you're fishing stand-up and you're locked in with a harness. Whatever it may be, you need to bring that tip down. So to bring the tip down, you bring the butt up. So if you want to prevent high sticks, keep that tip at a lower angle when you're lifting a fish, which you shouldn't really do, but if you have to, I get it. I lift fish. Everybody lifts fish. And when you bring that tip down, you're using that midsection of the rod. It's the thicker section. It's the more powerful section, and you're going to distribute that load where the rod can handle it. Now, I want to kind of stress the fact that there's different rods from ultralights to extra heavy, from finesse fishing to the middle, kind of mid game to big game. So all rods are different. All fishing applications are different. I don't want to make this sound like it's a one thing and only one thing. So if you're dealing with small panfish and light rods, it's going to be, high sticking has to do with all rods, but you're not going to want to lift fish that are bigger than, let's just say, the average person should know. If you don't know what your rod can handle, don't lift a fish. Let's keep it short and sweet as that. But if you do snap a rod, or if you've ever snapped a rod, and it's up in that first couple guides in that tip section, more than likely it was due to a high stick. And I bet you if we communicated one-on-one and said, hey man, tell me about how you broke the rod, I bet that we would have a conclusion, and we would agree, both of us, that if it broke up in that tip section, it was a high stick. If it was in the midsection, it was a grossly overloaded event. Whether it was the casting event, that there was too much weight and you were aggressively casting, or it was a lifting event where you had way more weight than the rod was designed to lift, and you were trying to deadlift it. There are some companies that will give you a deadlift rating, which is kind of cool. And they'll also sometimes give you a max drag rating. A lot of times in testing, they are very, very similar to one another, and that's how they come up with those numbers. Now, that is very cut and dry, and it's very easy for someone to figure out the breaking strength of a rod by doing a breaking strength test. But it's going back to what I mentioned about those other ratings, about how did a person come up with a rating of 1/4 to 3/4 on this 7-foot medium heavy rod, and that same rod from manufacturer B feels a lot heavier, but it has the same rating, or a lot lighter and it has the same rating. So that's something that I kind of have a question about. But to me, the answer is there's no standard in feel, and it's all personal preference. So it's one rod designer or one manufacturer rating on their own scale against their own rods. So basically what that said is one brand, their rods are going to be most of the time very, very consistent inside of that series. However, when you jump series to series, sometimes there's a little bit of confusion, and that's due to the materials, where you might have a higher grade material on one rod or a lower grade material on another series rods. And because those materials are much different and react different, and their actions can be different based on the mandrel or the taper, they'll give you different feels. So hopefully that helps you a little bit with buying a rod. Hopefully it helps you a little bit with actually the do's and don'ts with rods in terms of high sticking, how not to high stick. Hopefully I described that in an easy to understand way. I wanted to touch base a little bit about actions and a little bit about high sticking, and didn't just want to say high sticking is this and this is how you don't do it, because a lot of it has to do with how the rod bends and how the load is distributed across that rod that matters when you think about high sticking. But long story short, keep your tips down when that fish comes closer to you, and notice when that line is at a steeper angle coming down at your feet, or closer to the boat, or closer to, say, the shore, whatever, however you're fishing. Keep in mind to lower that tip. Sometimes a sidearm approach can be very, very helpful. Rather than having that the rod butt on your hip, bring it under your arm and get a sidearm approach, and that can sometimes be very, very helpful to eliminating a high sticking event, but also still keeping pressure on the fish so it doesn't shake in the end game, which is one of the main concerns of why people a lot of times do keep their tips up when the fish is close by. They're trying to keep pressure on it without being able to reel, because they're reaching out, trying to grab that leader, kind of putting the rod back, reaching out, and that's normally when it occurs, or the lifting events. So hopefully that helps. I'll kind of scroll around here, see if there's some questions that kind of came in, and see what we can do. So Cedar Run Lures is on here. I think he might still be on here. That's Blake at Fisherman's Headquarters. He is our rod guru. He knows a lot about rods. He builds a lot of custom rods. If you need some information about rods, reach out to him, ask. I can help you out. Blake can help you out. There's a lot to learn about rods in the rod world. So he reached out and said, message with any questions, please do. Ryan says, rail rods versus jigging rods. So I'm not sure really the question, but a rail rod is designed to be put on the rail of a boat. Sometimes it's the gunnel of the boat on a party boat. Sometimes you have a taller rail, and you can rest it on there. And rail rods are designed to be fished off the rail. So with a bigger reel, a lot of times people will fish a belt and harness for stand-up fishing. The West Coast guys have developed this style of fishing that slowly evolved to the East Coast and elsewhere, where they rest the rod on the rail and use the rod as a tool and the rail as a fulcrum. And that rod gets leverage off of the rail, and use the body weight under your armpit to crouch and use your legs to lower yourself to bring the butt down and tip up. Then you crank down, crouch. It's kind of like a kneeling. And you kind of get into a motion, almost like you can get into a motion with stand-up fishing, where you're crouching down with the harness on, using your legs, staying square, and and using the harness to your advantage, using your body weight and not your biceps and arms, which wear out much quicker than, say, your legs and your body weight would. So I'm not sure where that question was going, Ryan, about rail rods versus jigging rods, if you're asking about actions. If you are, jigging rods most of the time are going to be much softer. You would not want to fish a jigging rod off of a rail. The jigging rod is designed to flex and work that jig effectively. So if you're working that jig and it's not flexing as you retrieve and as you work it, it's going to make you, the angler, wear out quicker. So a jigging rod on a rail is going to fold in half almost like a taco. May even snap too. That being said, a rail rod is designed with a beefed up mid and back section. It's designed to be fished on the rail, and you'll see they have a faster action or a faster taper. Larger butt section or butt diameter. I don't want to say thinner tip because sometimes those tip diameters can be bigger or smaller. That's depending on the design of the rod. But you'll see it's most of them a quicker action, so you'll have that rod bend more in the tip section and mid section and not so much in the mid and back section like you would see on a slower action jigging rod. So hopefully that helps. If you have a question about that more in depth, reach out. I'd love to try to share what I know. Rail rods, explain them. Hopefully I did. But if I did not, a short, easy thing is they are designed to be fished on the rail, and that is designed for two things. It's designed for leverage, but also maneuverability. When you're hunkered into a belt and harness, stand-up fighting a fish, it's very difficult to move around amongst the vessel, amongst the boat. If you're on a private boat, you can kind of lock in the corner, and the captain's going to kind of jockey that vessel and keep you in the corner. It's very, very difficult to do that when you have multiple anglers in the boat hooked up. It's even more difficult to do that when you have multiple anglers hooked up on a larger vessel where there's someone in the bow, there's someone in the stern, there's people all over the place, there's fish all over. You can't just walk around, you can't just maneuver the boat around, you need to walk around. So if you're in a belt and harness, you're kind of waddling around with very limited maneuverability, and that's where rail rods will excel on those party boats where you need to move around. Hopefully that answers some things. And if you want to get more in depth with it, feel free to reach out. I'm not a rail fishing expert. The West Coast guys would be, but I do have some experience. I have fished off the rail, caught tuna rail fishing, and it's definitely an effective way to do it. If, like I said, if you want to talk about it, reach out. I'd love to share what I know. I'm not sure where that question was going. If I need to drop off a reel this weekend, what are your hours? So right now, basically every single day, it's safe to say we're open at 8 a.m. and we're closed at 5 p.m. There's some days we're here at 7 a.m. and there's some days that we're closing at 6 p.m. But it's best to call the shop between the hours of 8 and 5 any day and reach out to us and say, hey, I got a reel I want to drop off for service. Here's my name. Here's my phone number. This is what I'm looking to get done. And these are the reels. I have 1 reel. I have 2 reels. I have 20 reels. And we'll basically make up the service ticket, the work order, over the phone. So we're prepared for the drop off. You basically call us up and say, hey, I'm here. We come out with a bin or box if it's 1 reel, or maybe it's a tote if it's a bunch of reels. If you can bring them in your own vessel of sorts to have them protected, maybe with some towels, newspaper, say recycled cardboard, whatever it may be, that would be suggested. If you want to fill out a note with some specific details telling us what you want done, maybe there's a specific problem with one of the reels that you want to get, shared and relayed to the service tech, that would be a good idea. However, if you want to share that over the phone, we can definitely write up a detailed service work order and get that addressed for you. Just so you know, right now, the service time on Van Stalls is about 1 to 2 weeks. There are some parts we're waiting for that have been delayed to go a little deeper into that whole rigmarole. Van Staal was bought out by Pure Fishing, which is the parent company who owns Penn. They recently moved their facility from Tulsa. Well, they recently moved their products from the Tulsa Zebco facility that was under the parent company of Zebco Brands, which was Van Stahl's owner, to now Pure Fishing, which is in Kansas City, where everything else is distributed. So now the move, they've kind of been backed up. They had some of this COVID-19 struggles and delays. So if you're looking for Van Stahl service, it's 1 to 2 weeks right now. There are limited options to get them done right away in terms of a rush kind of expedited order. If you need something like that, you need to reach out to us. We need to review it before we bring the reel, before we promise anything. But that is doable. But it must be first approved with Lou, our VS Reel Tech. If you're talking about, so this is to Ross, if you're talking about, say, Penn, Abu, Shimano, Daiwa, any of those service, maybe Avet, Accurate, some of those reels, I would say we're probably about a week, so long as we have the parts. If we don't have the parts, we got to get something, it can add to the weight. So hopefully that answers your question. We do our absolute best to stock the primary parts. We stock a ton of Penn reel parts. We also have some Daiwa stuff and some other things. Okay, cool. So I just saw your comment there talking about Van Stahl. So if you've got a reel that is in good working order and there's nothing majorly wrong with it, it will probably be a quick service. I could say definitely within 2 weeks for sure. If you needed it right away, we can even get it quicker, especially if you're dropping off. You want to try to schedule a time with Lou, our VS Reel Tech. You could call, say, hey, here's my name, here's my phone number, or you can message us and say, hey, I want to get this reel serviced. I have a whatever it is, VS 100, 150, 200, whatever it is, and it's in good working order. I just need it serviced, and we could schedule and say, hey, Saturday morning, drop it off at 9 a.m., and we'll have it done by 10:30 for you, or something like that. So cool. I just saw your other message come in. You think it's a line roller issue. Got the reel last fall, only used it a handful of times, making a scraping noise. So scraping noise, any kind of screeching or scraping noise could be a bearing. If you think it's a line roller, the line roller is an external part, and the line roller sees a lot of water in all reels. It's a very, very common problem to see failure in reels from all different manufacturers. Van Stahl is one of the few reels that has a sealed bearing on the line roller. They have a seal there that's very, very important. That seal needs to stay lubricated to keep the longevity of that seal intact. When the seal dries out, some salt, some sand, obviously that line roller is turning as lines crossing it. They can rip, tear, fail, and water gets in there, and guess what? The bearing will get corroded, rust out, eventually locks up and fails. A lot of times people bring their reels in, Van Stahls, with a locked up line roller and they don't even know it. Because that line roller is so smooth, it doesn't make a lot of noise when it's locked up with the line going across it. They will groove. But that being said, if it is a line roller, it's a very, very easy fix. You could actually buy the line roller from us. I can give you the link to our page or our website. We could ship you the line roller. Very, very simple fix. It's a complete assembly. You don't have to build the assembly. We build them here. It's a one nut, a little bit of Loctite, game on, you're set. Going deeper into your inquiry and your question, the noise is probably your bearing, or I should say one of your bearings. Could be your clutch bearing, because a seal there failed and some water got in. If not your anti-reverse roller bearing, it could be the main bearing, but I'm going to have to say it's probably your anti-reverse roller bearing. The reason I say that is the second most common. There's no priority here, one or two, but the two most common problems would be line roller and anti-reverse. And that doesn't go for Van Stahl. That goes for all manufacturers. Penn, Shimano, Daiwa, any brand out there. Spinning reels use what's known as a one-way clutch roller bearing or a needle bearing. And they are very, very prone to corrosion issues and failure due to salt water. It's why you'll see a lot of these newer reels that are coming out in the market putting additional features there to protect it, which you'll see some seals. Daiwa uses what is known as mag seal in the higher end reels. One of the staples that they've had out for a long time was the Saltist, has the mag seal anti-reverse. Van Staal has sealed anti-reverse roller bearings. And a reel that I'll touch on maybe on the next post that I do here from Penn that was released has a sealed anti-reverse and also a sealed line roller. Two very common issues in all spinning reels. So hopefully that answers some of that and brings some light to that. Shout out to Ryan Zimmerman. What's up, dude? Thank you for putting out the good music. I'm sure this is a tough time for you, normally playing in all the bars and restaurants, putting out the good vibes, and obviously there's none of that going on. So stoked to see you're doing some live stuff. I watched a couple of your performances, props, and keep the dream alive, man. Keep rocking. Wish we could have a good jamboree here, but this virus has us shut down. So back to Ross. I'm stoked that he's got some more questions here. Line roller issue because the reel does not make noise when the reel's off the rod. Happening only when the line is running through the roller. So what you may have is a noisy line roller. What you can do is get a piece of line, whether it's monofilament leader line or braid, whatever it is, maybe even a shoestring. I mean, hell, you could probably even grab your phone charger, USB cable, and run it through the line roller and do one of these, over the top. It's not going to fit in that little groove underneath of it, but over top, do one of these and get that turning. And if you hear that sound, it's a noisy line roller. What that really means is that bearing is becoming noisy. It's probably on the verge of failing. But it could work like that for seasons upon seasons. But if you want to fix it, take the proactive approach. A line roller, I could look it up real quick. I think they're $20, $30. They're a little more expensive than, say a spring or a screw, but bearings are an expensive part, and it's not only a bearing, it has a stud that's inside, which is threaded, and it also has the line roller, which is a hardened, I believe, stainless material, and there's also some seals. It's a little assembly. So I believe the line roller assembly is about $30. Don't hold me to it, but it's something like that. If you want me to send you one, let me know. We can get that out of here to you, no problem. So jumping on, Jack just sent in a message, says, best way to connect hollow core to fluorocarbon other than a splice. So that is a good question. I'm going to say, though, if you've got hollow core, use it for its ability. Don't have hollow core and tie knots and do things that other lines you're forced to do. With hollow core, you have the ability to splice. You should really take advantage of its ability to do that. That's really the reason why you should have hollow core and why you should be fishing hollow core in certain applications. Diving more into that, hollow core line, for those that don't know, is Spectra hollow core, just like braided line, but rather than having, say, 4 or 8 individual strands or carriers, is woven most of the time with a higher count of carriers. For the example of Cortland, C16, 16 carriers, so 16 individual bobbins that weave to make a hollow core structure of line that looks like a finger trap. You can run line inside of it, and it will, when it's pulled tight, it will clamp down, and it creates a knotless, seamless connection. Well, I guess there is a seam, but it's not too much change in diameter. But it's very, very strong, 100% splice, and it distributes that load across that connection, across the two lines, across the hollow core and the monofilament, to distribute that load and be much, much stronger than, say, a knot, where you have kind of one point where it's point upon point, and that stress is focused on a small portion of that line. Most of the time, very, very strong knots, such as an FG, will break right on that braid side or very close to that knot on that braid side. A lot of times the mono will not, unless you're fishing some really, really light mono. Going more into some knots, you can say, oh, this knot breaks there, that knot breaks there commonly. But going back to your hollow core question, I really, really suggest you splice a loop in the hollow core and go loop to loop. If you are not so familiar with how to splice a loop, There are some videos on YouTube. You can check it out. There is a video that we were working on at one time. It kind of got put in the back burner of a kind of a splice how-to with Blake, who I gave a shout out to, Cedar on Lures. He is the rod guru, but he's also the hollow core splicing guru at the shop, amongst myself or Willie. Those would really be the three guys that are doing the hollow core splicing. So if you want to reach out to us, call, or when this stuff is over, stop in and talk and do a hands-on demonstration. I'm not sure where you're located at, but if you are close by, I would love to spend some time with you and really dial you in and teach you how to splice line to line, whether it's hollow core to hollow core or hollow core to mono, or splicing a loop in the hollow core. So now you can go to any other loop. So that's really the benefits of hollow core. So that's why I think you should do that. If you were not going to do that, tying an FG, I don't think is the best in hollow core line. Hollow core is very, very thick for its diameter, and I don't think it fits that well. A Unity Uni would work in a pinch. It's also going to be a very bulky knot. But that's probably what I would tie personally. If it was, I'm in a pinch and I need to tie a quick knot, it would be either the Unity Uni or say the Alberto, which is a double Albright, to connect a hollow core that say just recently broke off to a fluorocarbon leader. But if you do know how to do a splice, I'm not suggesting on the boat, but you could splice a loop somewhat easily with some single strand wire, and you could make a loop on the boat in a somewhat easy fashion. I'm not gonna say it's a 2-second thing, but that's how you get out of there in a pinch. So hopefully that helped you, Jack. And like I said, reach out if you've got more questions about that. Hopefully I dove into it a little bit. I could talk about hollow core splicing for the entire night. So stoked, appreciate the thumbs up. So I don't see many other questions coming in. There's not many people jumping on here. So I don't want to kind of talk to you guys all night about some random stuff. I mean, I could just ramble about fishing, and that's cool and all. I have some notes here that I want to talk about, which is the fishing report, the super bummed out part of ICAST, and a little bit about rod actions. And I touched upon all three of those. So I'm gonna check out here for the night. I appreciate you guys jumping on. If you guys have any ideas for more videos that you want to hear about, I've kind of got a list of some things that I want to push out here in the next, say, a couple of weeks. I'm not going to jump on every single day, but occasionally when some topics pop up or some questions come in, I'd love to jump on and answer them. So if there's anything you guys want to hear, feel free to send us a message, whether you're messaging it live to us at this time or sending a direct message saying, hey, on the next video, I would like you to talk about X, Y, and Z. And if we're up for it, we're up for it. We'll jump on. One thing we are planning to do, just to give you a little bit of insight, coming down the pike a bit, is I'm looking forward to bringing in some other people to kind of share the screen with me, so it's just not my mug and me rambling and not kind of getting any interaction. I talk on a regular basis with a number of top anglers, very, very good customers, professional captains, paid full-time captains, and also brand representatives in the industry and manufacturers that are kind of hands-on with fishing tackle all day long. And it's really those minds that really, like I mentioned, come together at ICAST that really move the industry forward. And I think there's a lot of kind of meetings of the minds that take place amongst professional paid captains and brand representatives and brand manufacturers and designers and field testers and tackle shops that are on the front lines of the industry that all put their minds together and ideas together that really make things progress forward. So there's some people that I don't really want to give their names out quite yet, but there's some people that are big into the offshore game, big into the line manufacturing game, that I've kind of asked if they would be interested to jump on, and they did say they are, so that's cool. Also, I'm trying to get a couple other employees at the shop that will share some insights. So you just don't hear from me, because if you stop in the shop, yeah, you may talk to me, you call on the phone, you may talk to me, you send a message, you may interact and message back and forth with me or an email. But there's also other guys that are very, very well, informed with what's going on in the fishery, say in New Jersey, where we're at, Central Jersey. They're looped with the industry of what's going on nationwide or brand to brand. They know about older products. They know about newer products. They know about problems. They know about some fixes. And that's really why we're here. We're here to help our customers catch more fish, really. And that's what we want to do. Yeah, we want to sell fishing tackle. That's how we make money. That's how we pay the bills. But I'll be quite honest with you. Anybody can jam tackle down your throat and say, buy this, this is great, buy this, buy that, you have to have this, you have to have that. Yeah, I like to promote fishing tackle. I like to talk about the benefits and features of certain things. That's part of retail fishing and sales. But the most important thing to me is long-term client and customer service, where you really get the value of, hey, I bought this from Amazon and I got problems. Can you help me out? And most time those customers that we help out become lifelong Fisherman's Headquarters customers and join the Fish Heads family. And they value that opinion that we share and that guidance that I think you're not going to get from Amazon or some other places. So if you've never shopped with us or if you've never interacted with us and tried to learn from us, I welcome you and I encourage you to reach out to us, and I would love to help you. I'm stoked that Swag just joined on. He is a great dude and he fishes hard. He's an ambassador that shares a lot of information with us. Fishing some Daiwa products, get a lot of feedback from him. Some Cortland line products, get a lot of feedback from him. I'm also a captain. I guess you consider professional captain because I get paid to take people fishing. So I'm on the water as much as possible. I also field test for Penn reels. Also on the pro staff of AFCO, American Fishing Tackle Company out of Southern California. I try to help companies by what I see on the East Coast. So for example, AFCO doesn't see much of what goes on in Long Beach Island, in the central New Jersey area. So I try to be the boots on the ground that give them feedback from the tackle shop's point of view and the angler's point of view, and the problems and some new areas that we could kind of share with. So Swag says he's here. There's only 8 people. So if we try to do this and it's not a disaster, as long as we're only having a small. So I saw a event come in here. A little pop up. It said Swag's looking to get on. So.
Yo, guys.
Yo, dude.
we're making it happen, man.
Yeah. So, gentlemen. So, whoever's on here, man, welcome Swag to the party.
Yeah, this is a
up?
big day.
Very big day. It's the first time we've done this.
I know. I'm happy to be successful, man. Yeah, today was a long day. I was out on the water all day today until that south wind picked up.
Tell us, man.
Yeah, I just sent you over a text. I didn't realize you were going live. So we did pretty good. Like, we fished this past weekend. Our last couple trips out, Saturday, Sunday, and actually got out yesterday for a little bit. And it's been pretty crappy fishing. Overall, we've been picking fish, picking keepers. We're blackfishing, obviously, for those of you guys who are just watching and don't know me. But I'm always blackfishing this time of year, and so we've been picking fish, but it's been a real crappy bite after, a pretty good start to April. Our first day out in the water, we had solid fish. Our second day out in the water, we had a fish just shy of 15 pounds. But today we got a nice fish. We had an 11-pounder in the boat that we let swim away, and we picked at a limit. We had ORL, so we let a bunch of fish go that were keepers, and it's nice to be able to throw some fish back and kind of drop and reel for most of the day. Yeah. Never really got like a solid bite like the days that you and Max had off of the tip of that jetty, but it was a good day, and it was a nice day on the water for most of it. So
awesome. So what are you doing, man? You fishing green crabs, white crabs, clam? Like what's the bait of choice?
So I got it all, man. We're stocked and loaded. I got whites, I got greens. I can't find surf clams, so we went to ShopRite and we bought a bunch of chowder clams. Gonna dig some up in the bay if we have to, but and then I also have shrimp, which is a key, usually early spring season. The cooked shrimp. A lot of people don't know about it, but the blackfish like shrimp.
I thought you brought some cocktail out in the boat, man.
I ate a couple. I'm not gonna lie. Yeah, so we get a frozen bag of cheap shrimp and we take them out. And white crabs were the ticket today. That's what all the big fish ate. All the keeper fish ate. The shrimp was working really good, but it was just all smaller fish. I mean, like I would drop down a piece of shrimp on a jig, and it would get inhaled and swim away, and I'd pull up a 9-inch blackfish. They were feasting on it, but it just wasn't the right size. So
Awesome.
the crab was getting it done, the white crab.
So can you see comments on your side? Because it looks like AS said green crabs and fiddlers. I'm just curious. Have you fished fiddlers recently? I know they're not the easiest to get.
Yeah, I can see the comments.
You can.
MAS1 is asking, always Magictail, buddy. Magictail makes the best blackfish jig in the game.
So hold on a second. So it's easy to claim that, but can you tell people why? Like, is there something special with the design, or is it just Magictail's the cool thing to do?
No, for sure. I mean, it's definitely the cool thing to do, of course, but it's because I use it. That's why it's cool. No, there's definitely a design to a Magictail jig that you'll see a lot of people copying now, and you know, Magictail kind of led the way with the design of how it's a collarless jig, which leaves a longer shank on the hook to get your bait on there, and it also is a gap when the jig sits on the bottom. There's a gap between the bottom of the hook and the floor of the ocean, which allows that fish to get its mouth. The way the blackfish feeds allows the fish to get its mouth around that jig hook, and that's why I like Magictails. I fish their jigs all the way down, you know, from the smallest back bay jigs when the tide slacks and there's no current. I was out fishing. I'll tell you, generally where I was fishing about 70 foot of water today, and at one point in time I had a 1/2 ounce jig on. Yeah, it's nice when you can fish that light because the fish just kind of pick it up and swim away with it. You don't even feel a bite. You just kind of you're like, oh, my line is slack for some reason. Well, it's because there's a fish swimming away with your jig. So for sure, to answer AS's question, green crabs and fiddlers, not where I'm fishing. The green crabs are not so good in the deeper water. They seem to like the whites better out there. Green crabs and fiddlers, 100% from the beach, from the jetties, in that shallow water where you'll find the green crabs and the fiddler crabs normally. The fiddlers are all over the marshes. If you're fishing the marshes, you should definitely have fiddlers with you because
Makes a lot of sense.
Match the hatch. It's how it goes. So
cool. So there you have it, man. I was pretty stoked that you kind of shared that. There's always, everybody's like, oh, why do you fish this bucktail? Or why do you fish this jig? And with fishing, it's so application specific that there's those little nuances and little designs that someone comes up with, like the brain at Magictail, Dante, an avid fisherman, expert fisherman, knows his stuff and says, I need to change this. I need to make this jig my own. And then now people are copying it because it's the best. So
yeah,
I'm stoked
sure.
Described that and gave the kind of the lowdown on what makes a Magictail tog jig really a game changer, like the name says, game changer tog jigs.
Definitely. So to jump on, like MAS is commenting in there, definitely slack water for the 1/2 ounce jig. I can get away with it with a light current. But the reason I'm able to fish so light, where a lot of guys wouldn't be able to, is I fish much lighter than most people do. I really take advantage of the technology that we have in fishing equipment nowadays. Like back in the day, if you wanted to bottom fish, you needed a big broomstick rod with a 10-ounce weight because these fish are strong and they pull hard. And in order to get them up and away from the wrecks, you need to have power. And with the technology, you don't have to go as big anymore. So I can get away. I fish a Daiwa Proteus SS. It's a 6'4" skinny little rod. It looks like a freshwater bass rod, but that thing has got some, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say balls on here, but that has got some balls to it, man. When I lock that up and crank down, I mean, the rod loads about 1/3 of the way down, and I'd put it, up against any other rod that any other black fisherman is fishing. I'm confident in my equipment. I fish that with a Daiwa Coastal 200, which is a smaller reel. Most guys are fishing a 300 or 400 size reel, but that smaller equipment allows me to get away with smaller braid. I fish 15-pound Cortland as my main line, and I go to a 40-pound fluorocarbon. I've been fishing the new Daiwa fluorocarbon leader. They're rock solid.
Just dude, Instagram's about to log us off. We got 30 seconds. So I'm super, super stoked you jumped on. I'm super stoked that you gave all that good information. I think it was a very packed and information-filled last, 5 minutes. So hopefully we can do this again soon. Thank you for everybody jumping on. We got
man.
12 seconds left, so just thank you. My nose was dripping there.
COVID, baby.
And,
All right, guys.
so much.
Thanks for letting me in here. I'll see you.
Peace.